You welcome Dean Martin.
How you been, Joey?
Hello. Yeah, sure. You're gonna start already, huh?
No, I'm not starting.
How are you?
I'm almost through.
Good to see you.
How'd all these people get in your room?
Everyone thought Dean Martin's drunken charm was just part of the act, a wink, a grin, and a glass of apple juice. But one night, during a live appearance on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, the illusion shattered. Dean wasn't pretending. He could barely stand. His jokes slipped into slurred confessions, and the studio froze as the man who built a career on effortless cool, unraveled in real-time producers begged to cut to commercial. But Dean refused, and then he said something that left the entire audience in stunned silence. This was no routine. This was a moment of raw heartbreak from a man drowning in grief after losing his son. Let's find out what happened. To understand how Dean Martin reached that breaking point, you have to go back to the very beginning. Dino Paul Crocetti was born on June 7, 1917, in a cramped two-room apartment above a shoemaker's shop in Steubenville, Ohio. His parents, Italian immigrants Guglielmo and Angela, fought to survive on almost nothing. Guglielmo cut hair 12 hours a day for $18 a week, while Angela scrubbed floors and washed laundry so the family wouldn't be evicted. They had no running water and shared an outdoor toilet with 3 other families. Meals were whatever bread, pasta, or homegrown vegetables they could manage. Dino didn't speak English until he was 5, and his accent made him an easy target at school. His older brother often had to accompany him just to help translate. By 13, Dino quit school, convinced he needed to bring home real money. He delivered bootleg whiskey at night for 50 cents a day, then moved on to running numbers for local bookies, shining shoes, pumping gas, stocking shelves, and delivering newspapers before sunrise. At 15, he lied about his age to work night shifts in a steel mill for $1.25 an hour. Survival was the only goal. That grind shaped his famous motto, "Easy does it," because he'd already lived the hard way. Around the same time, he started boxing under the name Kid Crochet. Between 1932 and 1936, he fought 36 matches, winning 25. The losses left their marks: a broken nose, shattered knuckles, a permanently split lip, and partial numbness that later became part of his signature half-smile. He used to joke, "I won all but 11, but every fight left something broken." In 1936, a devastating rabbit punch knocked him unconscious. He stopped breathing, was revived after 5 minutes, and spent days in the hospital with a life-threatening concussion. The family couldn't pay the $470 bill. That was the end of his boxing career. From then on, Dino focused on singing. By 17, he was performing in shady Steubenville clubs, sometimes dealing blackjack in the back rooms between sets. The crowds liked his smooth voice, inspired by Harry Mills of the Mills Brothers, and he earned whatever tips they tossed his way. Dean's first real break came in 1935, when bandleader Ernie McKay hired him for $75 a week, an incredible income during the Depression. He sang anywhere they would let him: the Walker House, the Rex Cigar Store, and countless small clubs. His voice was smooth and calm, the perfect contrast to the chaos he'd grown up with. But there was another side to his early years. At 17, he worked as a croupier at the Rex Cigar Store, a front for an illegal casino run by the Stola crime family. From 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., he worked the roulette wheel, earning triple what he made at the steel mill. When gamblers got angry, he stayed cool. When they lost, he sang to settle them down. The place was raided twice, and both times he slipped out the back before agents caught him. On slow nights, he performed under the name Dino Martini, blending charm and danger in a way that would stay with him forever. By 1938, he was broke and sharing a grimy New York apartment with fellow singer Sonny King. Desperate for cash, they staged bare-knuckle boxing matches in their living room, charging 50 cents admission. The first fight earned them $12. They kept it going until the landlord kicked them out for blood-stained walls. Everything changed in 1940 when Cleveland band leader Sammy Watkins offered Dino $200 a week, but insisted his name had to change. Dino Crocetti became Dean Martin, a name that sounded American and opened doors from 1940 to 1943. Dean toured ballrooms across the Midwest. His effortless style stood out, and audiences remembered him. In 1941, he married Betty McDonald and had 4 children, but constant touring strained the marriage. They divorced in 1949, just as Dean's career began to explode. He also had brushes with trouble. In 1942, he was arrested in a police raid on a Cleveland gambling joint, but the charges were quietly dropped, likely thanks to old underworld connections. Instead of hiding the incident, Dean embraced it, building a mysterious crooner with a past image drafted in 1943. He served only 14 months before being discharged for a hernia, a twist that would prove lucky. While others went to war, Dean stayed home and became a star. He performed at the Rio Bamba Room for $500 a night, launched his own radio show in 1944, and signed with Diamond Records in 1946. Then came the moment that changed comedy forever. On July 25, 1946, at the 500 Club in Atlantic City, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis were thrown together after another act canceled. They improvised. Dean sang, Jerry clowned, and the crowd erupted. Within days, they were making $1,000 a week. By September, $5,000 at the Copacabana. Soon, Hollywood and NBC came calling, and Paramount offered them $50,000 per film. When My Friend Irma hit theaters in 1949, it earned $3 million. And even though Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis weren't the stars, they stole the whole film. From 1949 to 1956, they made 16 movies together, bringing Paramount more than $50 million. Their shows sold out everywhere. At the Paramount Theater in New York, thousands stood outside just hoping for a glimpse. Dean sang, "That's Amore" in the Caddy, and it became his signature hit. 2 million copies sold, 10 weeks at number 2 on the Billboard charts. But behind the laughter, cracks were forming. Jerry became louder, more controlling, and Dean felt pushed into the background. By 1954, despite earning over $1 million each, tension was constant. During a Vegas show, an argument backstage escalated so badly that Jerry punched Dean in the mouth, sending him for stitches. Yet they still performed the next night. By 1956, the partnership was dead. On July 24th, they announced their split. Their final film, Hollywood or Bust, made $3 million, and the legendary duo vanished with a single press release. Many assumed Dean's career would collapse without Jerry. Instead, he rose higher. Months before the breakup, Dean had quietly recorded, "Memories Are Made of This." It hit number 1 for 5 straight weeks in 1955, selling over 3 million copies and earning him $100,000, proof he didn't need comedy to succeed. More hits followed: Sway, Inamorata, and his 1957 album Dream with Dean, which sold over 500,000 copies. His soft, effortless style became his trademark, drawing crowds in lounges and supper clubs nationwide. Then came 1962. Frank Sinatra, launching Reprise Records, invited Dean to join him. Dean's first album, French Style, set the tone. Playful, confident, and entirely his own reprise gave him full creative control. By 1965, he had released more than 40 albums and scored 20 top 40 singles. His 5-year deal was worth $1 million. But the real victory was freedom. Dean Martin was no longer anyone's sidekick. He had become his own man. By 1957, Dean Martin was headlining the Copacabana in New York, earning $10,000 a week, more than Sinatra, more than almost anyone. But every night he still had to sing That's Amore. It made him up to $50,000 per show, yet he hated the fake Italian lyrics and the cartoonish image it gave him. Still, he performed it over 1,000 times because that song paid for the life that gave him freedom. Then, in August 1964, he achieved the impossible. At the height of Beatlemania, Everybody Loves Somebody knocked A Hard Day's Night off the #1 spot. It only held for a week, but it gave Dean his first gold record and reminded the world he wasn't going anywhere. When asked how it felt to beat the Beatles, he just shrugged and said they'd taken a coffee break. But success didn't erase trouble. In 1958, the IRS discovered he'd hidden about $250,000 in foreign royalties. He was fined heavily, but instead of panicking, Dean turned the scandal into a business. Launching Dino brand cigarettes, complete with his silhouette on the packaging, his acting career soon shifted his reputation again. Howard Hawks cast him in Rio Bravo, 1959, as a broken alcoholic deputy, and critics saw a new side of him. The British Film Institute later called it the moment Dean stopped being cool and became human. The film now sits in the National Film Registry. Then came Ocean's 11 in 1960. Dean and the Rat Pack performed 2 shows a day in Vegas, then filmed all night, ad-libbing entire scenes. At the Sands Hotel, they created what became known as The Summit. Packing in 34,000 people over 3 weeks, Dean made it look effortless, though he always slipped home early for golf while the others partied. He kept working non-stop, earning a Golden Globe nomination for Who Was That Lady, stirring controversy in Kiss Me, Stupid, and appearing alongside Sinatra again in Marriage on the Rocks. Meanwhile, his personal life shifted. After divorcing Betty McDonald in 1949, he married Jean Beager and had 3 more children. Their marriage lasted 24 years, though it wasn't without strain, and she never remarried after their 1973 divorce. By the mid-1960s, Dean wasn't just famous, he was one of the richest entertainers alive. But what he wanted most wasn't money. He wanted control. In 1965, Dean Martin launched The Dean Martin Show on NBC, and it turned him into one of television's biggest stars. By 1967, it ranked in the top 10, and NBC paid him $34 million for a 3-year renewal. His contract was legendary. He didn't rehearse. He simply walked on stage, smiled, and everything worked. The drunk persona, complete with slurred words and a whiskey glass, was mostly apple juice. As his son Richie later explained, it was a prop, not a lifestyle. In 1973, he reinvented the show as the Dean Martin Comedy Hour and introduced the celebrity roasts, starting with Bob Hope and eventually roasting everyone from Sinatra to Jimmy Stewart. They filmed at the MGM Grand until a devastating fire in 1980 killed 85 people and halted production. Dean eventually returned, but the spark never fully came back. That decade also brought a moment fans never thought they'd see again: Dean's reunion with Jerry Lewis. On Labor Day 1976, during the Muscular Dystrophy Telethon, engineered by Frank Sinatra, the former partners shared the stage after 20 years of silence. Jerry cried, Dean smiled, and backstage they exchanged quiet apologies. Whether they truly reconnected after that remains a mystery. But for one night, the team was whole again. Meanwhile, Dean reinvented himself yet again. In 1966, he debuted as spy Matt Helm in The Silencers, a parody that unexpectedly became a box office hit and launched a full franchise. Sequels followed quickly: Murderers Row, The Ambushers, and The Wrecking Crew, the last featuring Sharon Tate in a breakout role trained by Bruce Lee himself. Her murder in 1969 devastated Dean, and he refused to make the 5th film. Columbia punished him by freezing profits, but he wouldn't budge. Matt Helm ended there. 2 years later came Airport, 1970, a massive global hit that earned $128 million and 9 Oscar nominations. He followed it with Something Big in 1971, a wild Western adventure filmed in Mexico. But afterward, he stepped back from leading roles. The grind no longer appealed to him. Instead, he shifted toward TV specials and quick, well-paid cameos that let him keep his freedom without the pressure of stardom. Throughout the 1970s, Dean Martin found a second life on television. In 1973, The Dean Martin Show transformed into a looser, funnier weekly roast, starting with Bob Hope and eventually roasting 54 celebrities over the next decade, mostly at the MGM Grand. It was easy, light, and perfectly suited to the pace Dean preferred. In the middle of this renewed fame, Dean made a surprising personal move. Just after divorcing Jane Bigger, he married 23-year-old Catherine Hahn on April 25, 1973. He adopted her daughter, Sasha, and tried to build a new home, but the marriage lasted only 3 years. They divorced quietly in 1976. His personal life was always complicated, 8 children from 3 marriages, but his deepest bond was with his son, Dean Paul Martin. Dino Jr. was born in 1951 and seemed destined for greatness. He starred in Players in 1979, earning a Golden Globe nomination. Before joining the Air Force and becoming a respected fighter pilot, Dean was proud, not of the fame, but of the man his son had become. Then, on March 21, 1987, tragedy struck. During a routine flight, Dino's F-4C Phantom jet vanished in a sudden snowstorm and crashed into Mount San Gorgonio. Both he and weapons officer Ramon Ortiz died instantly. It took 6 days to find the wreckage. Dean was never the same. The playful drunk act, usually apple juice, not whiskey, faded. He retreated, canceled shows, and began drinking for real. When Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. invited him on the Together Again tour in 1988, he lasted 1 week. The music, the laughter, none of it could reach him. His health deteriorated quickly. Years of smoking led to emphysema. By the early 90s, he rarely left home. In 1993, doctors diagnosed him with lung cancer and urged surgery, but Dean refused. He told friends he was done fighting. He quit smoking, stayed home, and waited. On December 25, 1995, at 3:30 a.m., Dean Martin died at home in Beverly Hills. He was 78. Las Vegas dimmed its lights. Sinatra called him a brother. Jerry Lewis, once estranged, now grieving, broke down crying when he heard the news. About 200 people attended the quiet funeral at Good Shepherd Catholic Church. Speakers like Jerry Lewis, Gregory Peck, and Tony Bennett said what the press rarely acknowledged. Dean wasn't just cool. He was kind, steady, and far smarter than he let on. After his death, stories emerged revealing the truth. While everyone assumed he drifted through life on charm and booze, Dean had quietly built a real estate empire. Land he bought for $150,000 in the 1960s later sold for over $12 million. His estate reached $30 million. His Beverly Hills home, purchased for $120,000, was eventually worth nearly $28 million. His daughter Diana cried when she saw how carefully he had planned everything. The world finally understood. The drunk was mostly apple juice, the jokes were calculated, and behind the laid-back image was a man who always stayed one step ahead, right up to the end.